The auction house smelled like hay, sweat, and something stale, like rain-soaked cardboard left out too long. Carter Hayes leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, worn leather jacket zipped halfway, despite the heat from the buzzing overhead lights. He hadn't meant to be here. Hell, he hadn't set foot in town for weeks. But old habits die hard, and after spotting a notice tacked to the post office bulletin board about a livestock auction, he figured it might be worth checking out. His barn could always use a few new fence posts, maybe a spare generator. What he didn't expect, what stopped him dead in his tracks, was the sight of the dog lying flat on his side in the center of the concrete ring. Ribs showed through patchy fur. The German shepherd barely flicked an ear at the sound of the auctioneer's gavel banging against the podium. His coat was dull, scar tissue tracing a jagged map across his flank and up one hind leg, the kind of marks Carter had seen before on Marines who'd spent too long in the wrong kind of hell. "Lot 47, the auctioneer called, his voice echoing off the corrugated metal walls. "Military dog, 5 years old, no papers, no training record. Current bid stands at nothing. Who'll start me off at 50? Laughter rippled through the small crowd, ranchers, fence contractors, a few kids hoping for a cheap pony. "That thing's half dead," someone snorted. $50 is too much." Carter's gut twisted at the casual cruelty. He'd seen that look before, not just on dogs, but in mirrors, hospital beds, and the eyes of men too tired to fight and too stubborn to quit. That dog lying there without hope was a reflection he couldn't ignore. The auctioneer cleared his throat, tapping the gavel again. "Come on now, folks. Give the fella a chance." No one moved. No one cared. Carter shifted, the scuffed heel of his boot scraping the floor loud enough to draw attention. His voice was calm, low, but it cut through the noise like a rifle shot. "I'll take him." Heads turned. The auctioneer squinted past the lights, trying to place the voice. 50? 20, Carter said flatly. More chuckles. One man shook his head. "Ain't worth 20 cents. 20, Carter repeated, this time locking eyes with the auctioneer, the no-nonsense tone of a man who wasn't asking twice. The gavel came down. "Sold. $20 to the gentleman in the back." Carter stepped forward, not bothering to glance at the murmuring crowd. His focus was on the dog. Up close, Ranger's condition was even worse. Fresh scabs where a collar must have rubbed raw, a patch of fur missing near his shoulder, and eyes so dark and distant they barely seemed alive. Carter crouched, resting his forearms on his knees, keeping his voice soft. "You're okay now, buddy," he said, quieter than the auction noise behind him. "Name's Carter. Let's get you out of here." The dog didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't lift his head, just lay there like a thing left behind too many times to care anymore. Lisa Grady, the shelter manager, approached with a clipboard. "He's a tough case," she said softly, glancing down at the shepherd with something that resembled guilt. "Was part of some military program, but his records got lost. I guess no one wanted him. And we're over capacity." Carter took the clipboard, barely glancing at the liability waiver before signing his name with a quick scrawl. "What's his name?" "Shelter just called him Ranger. He doesn't respond to much." Carter stood, folding the papers into his jacket pocket. "He'll come around." "Don't get your hopes up," Lisa said, her tone half warning, half sadness. "Dogs like him, they don't bounce back." Carter glanced down at the scarred shepherd, eyes softening just a fraction. "Neither do guys like me." As the crowd shifted to the next lot, Carter knelt again, this time giving Ranger a chance to catch his scent. The dog's nostrils flared slightly, but he didn't move. Carter didn't reach for him, didn't tug the leash hanging limp from his collar. He just waited, the way you waited for a spooked horse to decide if you were safe. "We're going home, partner," Carter said quietly. "Whatever they did to you, they're not doing it again." Ranger didn't lift his head, but his tail twitched just once, barely noticeable, like a flicker of something buried deep. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was enough. The ride back to Hayes Ranch was dead silent except for the soft hum of Carter's old Ford's engine and the occasional rattle of the worn dog crate in the back seat. Ranger lay curled up inside, his body tense, even though Carter had left the door unlatched. Every bump in the gravel road made the shepherd flinch, muscles coiling like he expected a blow that never came. Carter didn't talk much on the drive. He'd learned, both from war and life, that silence had a way of settling nerves faster than words ever could. But every so often, he'd glance in the rearview mirror, watching Ranger's reflection, ears flat, tail tucked, eyes locked somewhere far beyond the cabin's worn leather seats. When they reached the ranch, Carter pulled the truck into the long gravel driveway and killed the engine. The wide Montana sky stretched above them, streaked with the golden violet of early dusk. Carter opened the truck's back door, letting the cool air sweep inside. Ranger didn't move. "All right, buddy," Carter said quietly, squatting beside the open door. "This is home now. No cages, no chains. Just you, me, and about 200 acres of quiet." The shepherd's paws stayed glued to the crate floor. "Not gonna drag you out," Carter added, voice calm and steady. "You've had enough of that, haven't you?" He sat down on the gravel, resting his back against the wheel well. The stones bit into his jeans, but Carter didn't care. He just sat, not looking at Ranger directly, giving him space to decide. "You know," Carter said after a while, "I wasn't supposed to be here either. Got out of the teams, thought I could handle the quiet. Turns out quiet's a hell of a lot louder than gunfire." The wind rustled through the tall grass beyond the fence line, carrying the sharp scent of pine and earth. Ranger's ears twitched, but the dog didn't move. "Lost a few too many good men," Carter went on, voice softer now. "Didn't know how to come back after that. Figured if I stayed out here long enough, maybe I'd stop seeing their faces every time I closed my eyes." Ranger shifted, barely, but Carter caught it. A paw inching forward, nose twitching toward the open air. "You're not broken," Carter said. "Neither am I." He stayed there until the sun dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows across the dirt driveway. Eventually, with a hesitant shuffle, Ranger stepped down onto the gravel. His paws moved carefully, like every inch was a minefield. "There you go," Carter murmured. "One step at a time, partner." It was nearly dark when Carter finally led Ranger inside, not with a leash, but with quiet patience and the occasional backstep to show him the way. The cabin was simple. Wood floors, a battered leather couch, walls lined with photos of horses, and the Hayes family's long-dead cattle operation. It smelled like coffee, cedar, and the faint trace of gun oil. Ranger stuck close to the door, body low to the floor, eyes scanning every corner like he expected an ambush. Carter let him be. The dog would find his own rhythm. They both would. A knock at the door broke the fragile quiet. Ranger startled, claws skidding on wood, hackles rising like a storm cloud along his spine. "Easy," Carter said, stepping between the door and the dog at his heel. "It's all right." The door swung open, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered man with a badge clipped to his belt and a faint limp in his left leg. "Travis," Carter greeted, leaning one shoulder against the doorframe. "What brings you out here?" Deputy Travis Cole grinned. the kind of lopsided smile only men who've dodged the same bullets can share. "Heard you made a hell of a purchase at the auction today." His eyes shifted past Carter's shoulder, landing on Ranger. "That him?" Carter stepped aside, letting Travis get a clearer view. Ranger pressed himself into the corner, trembling, but his eyes never left Travis. "Jesus," Travis muttered. "Poor bastard looks like he's been through the ringer." "Yeah," Carter said. "We both have." Travis's grin faded. "You know there's chatter about dogs like him. One's from the enhanced K9 program. Most of them didn't make it out." "Enhanced K9? Carter's brow furrowed. Travis rubbed the back of his neck. "Long story. Let's just say some of those elite training techniques turned into something a lot darker. You want to know where that dog came from? I can probably dig." Carter glanced back at Ranger, the scars along the shepherd's side catching the porch light. "Might be worth knowing." Travis nodded, then clapped Carter's shoulder. "I'll be in touch. You need anything? You call me." After the deputy left, Carter crouched down a few feet from Ranger, careful not to close the gap too fast. "See that?" he said softly. "That's Travis. Good guy. Served with me overseas. He's not going to hurt you." Ranger didn't relax, but his breathing slowed just a hair. "Long way to go," Carter said. "But we're not doing it alone." From the kitchen window, the first stars blinked into the Montana sky. Carter leaned back against the wall, settling in for the long haul. They'd both survived too much to quit now. The first night at Hayes Ranch was long for both of them. Ranger paced the length of the living room, nails clicking on the old wood floor. Every creak of the house made him flinch. Every distant coyote howl sent his ears snapping to attention. He didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't lie down. Carter knew the feeling all too well. The battered leather couch sat empty, but Carter didn't bother using it. Instead, he settled onto the floor, back resting against the couch frame, legs stretched out in front of him. His battered copy of Lonesome Dove lay open on his knee, though his eyes rarely left Ranger. "You can have the couch," Carter said softly, voice barely above a whisper. "Hell, you can have the whole damn place. I'm just the guy who pays the taxes." Ranger stood near the door, muscles tight, head low. His eyes flicked to Carter, then away, like eye contact was some kind of threat. "Yeah," Carter muttered. "I know how that feels too." The night dragged on. Carter read a page or two, then closed the book, letting silence fill the space between them. He could feel Ranger's stare even when he wasn't looking. They were two ghosts haunting the same house, one with a rifle in the closet, the other with scars under his fur. By morning, neither had slept much. Ranger hadn't moved far from the door. Carter's back ached from the floor, but he didn't complain. He brewed a pot of coffee, leaving a second bowl of fresh water next to Ranger's untouched food. "Suit yourself," Carter said, tapping the edge of the metal bowl with his boot. "I'll leave the light on for you." The ranch was quiet, save for the whisper of wind through the grass and the occasional creak of the barn settling under its own weight. Carter moved through his morning chores, feeding the horses, checking the fence line, always aware of the shadow at his back. Ranger followed, not close, not far. 10, maybe 12 feet, just enough distance to retreat if needed. But he followed. That was enough. By the third day, a rhythm had started to form. Carter talked, not much, but enough to fill the silence. Stories about the ranch, his old SEAL team, the time his dad accidentally set the barn on fire trying to cook Thanksgiving turkey with a blowtorch. Ranger didn't react. Not at first. but Carter kept talking anyway. "You ever get tired of just surviving, Ranger?" Carter asked one afternoon, both of them sitting on the porch steps. "That's the part they don't tell you. The war ends, but you don't go home. You just keep surviving." Ranger's ears twitched at the sound of his name. "Yeah," Carter said, rubbing his jaw. "Me too." It was the rainstorm that finally cracked the shell. The sky broke open late one night, sheets of rain hammering the tin roof, wind screaming through the trees like incoming mortar fire. Carter woke on the couch to the sound of claws scrabbling on wood. Ranger was in full panic, body pressed into the corner, trembling so hard the water bowl beside him rattled. "Hey," Carter called softly, sliding off the couch onto the floor. "Easy, buddy. It's just rain." Ranger's chest heaved, breath coming in short, sharp bursts. His eyes were wild, unfocused, seeing something that wasn't there. Carter didn't move closer. Instead, he grabbed a blanket off the couch and sat down on the floor, leaving a good 5 feet between them. He draped the blanket over his legs, leaned back against the couch, and started talking. Low, steady, nothing urgent. "It's just rain," Carter said again. "I know it sounds like hell breaking loose, but it's just rain." Ranger's ears flicked at his voice, though his trembling didn't stop. "Used to hate the rain," Carter went on. "Sounded too much like rotors coming in hot. First time I heard it after I got home, I damn near tore a hole in the drywall trying to find cover." He laughed, a soft, self-deprecating sound. "Took a while to remember rain's just rain. Doesn't mean anyone's coming." Ranger's shaking eased just a little. His paws tucked closer to his chest, body still curled tight. "Hell of a pair we make," Carter muttered. "One of us is going to have to figure out how to sleep through a storm." He stretched out on the floor, hands folded under his head, eyes on the ceiling. Rain drummed against the windows, but Carter didn't move. Minutes passed, then an hour. At some point, so slowly it barely made a sound, Ranger crept forward, belly low to the floor, every muscle ready to bolt. He stopped just shy of Carter's feet, curled up on the blanket's edge. Carter didn't acknowledge it, didn't reach, didn't speak. But when he woke at dawn, stiff and sore, there was a warm weight pressed against his leg. Ranger. The shepherd's head rested on Carter's shin, eyes closed, breath deep and even. Carter stayed still, letting the moment stretch as long as it would hold. Trust was a fragile thing, earned in inches, not miles. But this was a start. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across Hayes Ranch, the sky painted in soft golds and purples. Carter led Ranger along the narrow dirt path that wound behind the barn. The same route they walked every evening. The dog stayed close, his body relaxed, but his eyes constantly scanned the tree line. Old habits died hard. As they neared the back fence, the distant rumble of a truck engine echoed through the quiet. Ranger froze, every muscle locked tight. His ears flattened, tail stiff, and a low growl vibrated in his chest. Carter followed his gaze. At the far end of the road, a beat-up Dodge pickup sat just beyond the property line, engine running, headlights off. The windows were tinted, and though Carter couldn't see the driver, the unmistakable feeling of being watched burned between his shoulder blades. "Easy, boy," Carter murmured, resting a hand on Ranger's back. But the shepherd's growl deepened, a warning born from experience, not fear. That night, Carter called Rachel. "Anyone asking about Ranger lately?" His tone was calm, but Rachel immediately heard the edge underneath. "Actually, yeah," her voice lowered. "Someone called the shelter yesterday. They didn't leave a name, just asked if the German Shepherd from the auction was still alive. Carter's fingers curled tighter around the phone. What else? Nothing. But they knew too much. Dates, injuries. Whoever it was, they weren't just curious. The next morning, Deputy Travis pulled up in his cruiser, stepping out with a grim expression. "We might have a problem," he said, handing Carter a worn file. "This is from an old case, underground K9 training ring we broke up 5 years ago." Carter flipped through the photos. Metal cages, scarred dogs, the remnants of an illegal training operation built to turn military dogs into lethal, uncontrollable weapons. One photo made him stop cold. Ranger, younger, but already bearing the marks of that life. "Your dog wasn't just unlucky," Travis said quietly. "He was trained by them. And someone, maybe the people who ran that program, wants him back." Carter's jaw tightened. "They can try." Ranger stood beside him, head high, no longer trembling. Whoever was coming, they'd have to go through both of them. The first time Carter saw Vincent Crowley was through the cracked screen door of his own cabin. The man stood at the edge of the porch, arms crossed, a confident smirk plastered across his weathered face. Behind him, a younger man, his son, Jason, leaned against a black SUV, watching like this was all some routine afternoon. "Vincent," Carter said, his voice smooth but cold. "I believe you've got something that belongs to me." Carter stepped out, keeping himself between the men and the shepherd at his heel. "You're trespassing," he said flatly. Vincent's grin widened. "I'm just here for what's mine. That dog, Ranger, yeah? He's enhanced K9 property. We invested a lot of money into him." Ranger's body was rigid, ears pinned back, teeth slightly bared. But it wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition. The man who'd broken him stood right there. "You invested in torture," Carter said, his voice low. "He's not yours." Jason took a step forward, but Ranger's snarl froze him in place. "Easy, boy," Vincent sneered. "You remember me, don't you?" The shepherd lunged, but Carter's firm hand on his collar stopped him just short. "You need to leave," Carter said. "Right now." Vincent's smile never wavered, but the threat was clear. Dogs like him, they never forget who made them. "Neither do men like me," Carter said, his voice sharp as a knife. "Now get the hell off my land." Father and son exchanged a glance. Then Vincent gave a mock salute. "See you around, Hayes." As the SUV disappeared down the road, Carter knelt beside Ranger, feeling the tremor running through the dog's body. "They're not taking you back," Carter promised. "Not now, not ever." Ranger leaned into him, just slightly. It wasn't trust, not fully, but it was something close. Whatever fight was coming, they'd face it together.
The courtroom inside the Gallatin County Courthouse was smaller than Carter expected, but the weight of what was about to happen made the air feel thick and heavy. Every creak of the wooden benches, every shuffle of papers echoed louder than it should. Carter sat at the defendant's table, fingers steepled, knuckles white. Ranger lay curled at his feet, not asleep, not relaxed, but watching. Always watching. Across the room sat Vincent Crowley, wearing the same slick smile he'd worn on Carter's porch, flanked by two high-priced attorneys in suits too sharp for a town like Bozeman. His son, Jason, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, expression somewhere between boredom and barely contained arrogance. Rachel Kim sat behind Carter, a thick binder of medical records balanced on her knees, while Deputy Travis Cole stood by the back wall, arms folded, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a permanent scowl, took her seat. She peered down over her glasses, her gaze settling on Ranger. "Well," she said dryly. "Let's get to it." Crowley's lead attorney stood, buttoning his suit jacket like this was some corporate merger instead of a fight for a dog's life. "Your Honor, the matter before the court is simple. Ranger, formerly identified as Military Working Dog Echo 117, is property of the Enhanced K-9 program, a private entity with clear contractual rights to any animal trained under its protocols. Mr. Hayes is unlawfully harboring said property." Carter didn't flinch. Neither did Ranger. "Property. Like hell." His attorney, a local named Hank Grady who looked like he hadn't worn a suit since the Bush administration, stood up. "Your Honor, this isn't a property dispute. It's a custody case. Ranger isn't equipment, he's a living being. One who suffered extensive physical and psychological trauma at the hands of the very people trying to reclaim him." The judge leaned forward, steepling her fingers. "Mr. Grady, are you asserting that Ranger has legal standing?" "We're asserting that Ranger's best interests, his welfare, his safety, matter far more than some outdated property clause," Hank said. "We have evidence to show exactly what happened to him under Crowley's so-called training program." Crowley's attorney barely hid his smirk. "Your Honor, the Enhanced K-9 program was fully compliant with all military and private sector regulations. Any alleged mistreatment is unsubstantiated speculation." That's when Rachel stood. "If I may," she said, holding up her binder. "I'm Dr. Rachel Kim, veterinarian at Gallatin Vet Clinic. I personally examined Ranger the night Carter Hayes rescued him. What I found is not speculation." She walked to the front, her voice steady but charged with barely contained anger. "Extensive scar tissue consistent with repeated electrical shocks. Microfractures along the ribs and forelimbs, suggesting blunt force trauma. PTSD symptoms mirroring those seen in combat veterans, including hypervigilance, startle reflex, and situational withdrawal." The judge flipped through the binder as Rachel spoke. "You're saying this dog was tortured?" "I'm saying this dog was systematically broken," Rachel said. "And the person responsible is sitting right there." She pointed at Crowley, who barely raised an eyebrow. "Objection." Crowley's attorney barked. "Unfounded accusations." "Overruled," the judge said calmly. "I'll decide what's unfounded." The tension in the room thickened as Travis stepped forward. "Your Honor, I'm Deputy Travis Cole, Gallatin County Sheriff's Office. I served with Mr. Hayes overseas, and I've been investigating reports tied to the Enhanced K-9 program for over 5 years. This isn't just about Ranger." He handed over a folder thicker than the court's own case file. "There are documented cases of at least 18 other dogs listed as unfit for adoption, who either disappeared or were destroyed under suspicious circumstances." Crowley's lawyer stood again. "Your Honor, this is a smear campaign designed to discredit my client and disrupt his perfectly legal business." "Perfectly legal?" Carter said, standing for the first time. "You beat those dogs into submission. Drugged them when they resisted. And when they broke, you tossed them aside like garbage." Crowley's smile faltered just a bit. "They're soldiers," Carter continued, his voice low but full of steel. "Same as me. Same as Ranger. And they deserve better than to be sold off to the highest bidder or put down because they wouldn't play your sick games." The room went silent. Even the judge let it hang for a moment before clearing her throat. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "I appreciate your passion. Let's keep this professional." Carter sat, but the fire in his eyes didn't dim. "Now," the judge said, "I've reviewed the documentation from both sides, including the Enhanced K-9 contracts and the adoption records from Gallatin Animal Shelter. It's clear Ranger was declared unfit for further service and placed for adoption, meaning legal custody transferred to the shelter." Crowley's attorney opened his mouth, but the judge held up her hand. That's not the only thing I reviewed, she said. The medical evidence, the video recordings from the shelter, and the sworn affidavits from Dr. Kim and Deputy Cole paint a disturbing picture, one that raises serious ethical and legal questions about how these animals were treated. She leaned back in her chair, eyes settling on Crowley like a hawk sizing up prey. I can't undo what's been done to those dogs, she said. But I can damn sure make sure it doesn't happen to this one. As if on cue, Ranger stood, without prompting, without command. The battered shepherd walked to Carter's side and sat, pressing his head gently against Carter's knee. The courtroom, already silent, seemed to hold its breath. The judge watched for a long moment, something softening in her expression. This dog has made his choice, she said. And so have I. She banged her gavel. Custody of Ranger is hereby granted to Mr. Carter Hayes. Furthermore, Mr. Vincent Crowley and Mr. Jason Crowley are prohibited from any contact with Ranger, directly or indirectly. Crowley's knuckles went white against the table, but he said nothing. Not yet. The judge stood. This hearing is adjourned. The moment the door closed behind her, Crowley leaned over the table, voice a low, venomous whisper. This isn't over. Carter didn't smile. It's over when I say it is. Outside, with the cold Montana wind whipping through the parking lot, Carter knelt beside Ranger, running a hand down his back. We did it, buddy. Ranger didn't wag his tail, but for the first time, the tension in his body eased just a little. Travis clapped a hand on Carter's shoulder. You know this was just the opening round, right? Carter stood, his gaze drifting toward the horizon. Yeah. You think you're ready for the next one? Carter glanced down at Ranger, scarred, battered, but still standing. Damn right I am. Autumn stretched across Montana, golden and peaceful, but Carter knew peace didn't come easy. Ranger lay beside him on the porch, his eyes soft but ever watchful, tracking every whisper of wind. The quiet was interrupted by the sound of tires on gravel. A beat-up truck rolled in, and Travis stepped out. You made some noise, he said with a grin. Handlers. Rescues. They're all reaching out. Carter frowned. What do they want? Help. Travis handed him a folder, files on dogs like Ranger. All scarred. All labeled too dangerous. They need a place. A chance. Rachel joined them, arms full of paperwork. We could do something here. A rehab program. For the dogs, and for guys like you. Carter looked across the pasture, where Ranger walked the fence line, confident and strong. The dog who once couldn't step into a house now stood guard over every inch of land like he belonged. Second chance K9, Carter said softly. For the ones no one else believes in. Over the next weeks, the ranch transformed. Fences were mended. Stalls converted to kennels. And one by one, the forgotten dogs arrived. Ranger met each of them with calm authority, not a leader by force, but by example. One cold morning, Carter sat on the porch, Ranger's head resting against his leg. We're not broken, are we, buddy? Carter murmured. Ranger's tail gave one soft thump. No. They weren't broken. They were home. The end.